Ecclesiastes 11:5 says, as you do not know the way, the spirit comes to the bones in the womb of a woman with a child. So you do not know the work of God who makes everything. So today we're going to talk a little bit on God. Sometimes I don't know what you're doing. I can't figure it out. Sometimes we say to ourselves, God, I can't figure out what you're doing. But I do want you to understand one thing. Don't lose hope because God has a plan. And Jeremiah 29:11 tells us that. Trusting God when we don't understand can be hard. There has been many times in our lives when God has brought us to a place where we have nothing else to do but to trust Him. Sometimes you can't move. Sometimes you don't have no control over it, which you don't have none. Sometimes you may not even understand it. But guess what? I learned how to trust God. Proverbs 3:5 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not rely on your own understanding, but all your ways trust Him. You see, because faith in God is a risky thing. It means that we are putting ourselves and sometimes our lives on the line for something that we can't necessarily see. It could be a job, it could be our health, it could be our business. But it requires us to trust God. And we don't, and then when we don't understand how He will provide the next payment rent, maybe, or the next car note, whatever it is, no matter what it is, faith requires risk. Because I can remember as a child when I was growing up to be an adult, there were many times in life, and I know you have experienced this also. We never understood our parents' rules. Some of us thought that they were too strict, they was too hard on us, and we grew to be a little resentful of how much freedom that our classmates, our other friends had. And we didn't have that in the household. But I know some of you can look back because I know I recently looked back over my life. Sometimes it takes you a while to look back. Even now that I done turned up into age, I have looked back. I can see what my parents was trying to do. They were trying to install in us a good work ethic. Our parents was trying to help us to understand how to get ahead in life and to prepare for life after we finish school or even when we finish college. And we should be incredibly grateful. God is like a parent. He has plans that we may not understand, things that we may not even see, things that's right now in the present at this time. But that does not mean that God's plans are not good. That does not mean that what He's putting us through right now doesn't matter. We don't have to understand God's plan to trust Him. We just have to trust God to understand His plans because we have no control. There have been times in our life where God gave us a promise. The promise was so supernatural and direct that we knew it was from Him. But we were so selfish, disobedient. God told us He would answer our prayers, but He didn't deliver us overnight. Maybe it took some time, but God didn't delay it, did He? To Him, years are like days. God answered at the right time, and God's time is always the right time. If He would have answered sooner, some of us would have been what? In deep trouble. God saw the things that we did not see, and He allowed us to learn things that we would not have learned if we just didn't wait. There are reasons for trials. There are reasons for tribulations and unanswered prayers. Sometimes we have to admit that we don't know the exact reason that God has answered yet. However, what He says, He already knows. Proverbs 3 and 5 tells us, it say, trust in the Lord, like I already said. Lean not to your own understanding. Because right now I'm talking, it's something personally for me too, personally for me. I had to believe in such a thing as, I don't believe in delayed prayers. I don't. But there was a time in my life where I had to trust God. In my feeble mind, my prayers wasn't being delayed when they wasn't being answered the way that I wanted to be answered. But God is always on time. But sometimes we worry so much about timing that we forget about God's timing. Sometimes as believers, God is going to take us through some difficult roads to work through us, to work in us, no matter how hard it is. But we have to just continue to trust him, no matter how hard it may be. Just remember to pray these words. Let God's will be done. It's not your will. Let God's will be done. God is not like man. Will redeem to be long, short term for God. 2 Peter 3 and 8 tells, but do not overlook this one fact, beloved, that with the Lord, one day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is like one day. So I say unto you today, don't give up hope. Keep on trusting God. If there is a delay, see it as an opportunity to grow in patience. God uses his delays to teach us to trust him more fully and to submit more thoroughly through his lordship in our lives. So remember these things. Paul had to remember those things in Romans 15. He had even wrote before he went into Jerusalem. Paul was seeking to serve the Lord by spreading the gospel where Christ had yet not been named. You see, sometimes we want to put God on our agenda, but sometimes we need to get ahead and be on God's agenda and on God's time. So don't get discouraged. When God delays, we must trust him by submitting our agendas to him. We must trust him to accomplish his will through us with his power and his spirit. We must trust in God and not in our own circumstances. In Jesus' name that I tell you, trust God.